Welcome into episode 235 of the Sources Say podcast, your go-to Kentucky basketball and recruiting podcast on the growing KSR Podcast Network. Sources Say is, as always, presented by our good friends at Justice Dental. Visit one of their two Lexington locations. It's on Blazer Parkway and Wellington Way by scheduling an appointment online at justicedental.com or by calling 859-543-0700. You can even send a text message to one of their friendly team members at the same number to ask a question or make an appointment. Now is a great time to schedule your dental cleaning. Dr. Thompson, Dr. Justice, and their team strive to provide you with good oral health and a comfortable environment. The Justice Dental team looks forward to seeing you soon. I am your host, Jack Pilgrim of Kentucky Sports Radio. Very happy to be joined once again by the one and only Shawn Smith of Go Big Blue Country. Shawn, how the heck are you?
I am fantastic, Jack Pilgrim. How are you?
Oh, feeling absolutely peachy after Kentucky's 6-game winning streak in the SEC. Most recently, a 72-67 victory over the Florida Gators. Always a good thing to beat the SEC rival. 72-67 victory over the Florida Gators. Feedback on my end. There we go. I think we're back. Another very impressive win over the Florida Gators. Always a good thing to beat those rascally Gators. Shawn, early thoughts on the win?
It's a big win, right? Especially where Florida was coming off of a win against Tennessee prior to the trip to Lexington. So a massive win for Kentucky to keep that SEC winning streak alive. I mean, they're still there in contention to earn a very good seed in the SEC tournament. And I think that's the goal at this point, right? Just keep stockpiling wins and keep getting yourself off that bubble and get yourself into that NCAA tournament. And I think Kentucky picked up a very solid win Saturday night up at Rupp Arena, and they had to execute down the stretch to do it.
Yeah, this was definitely one that we kind of had our things. We had it circled on the calendar for quite some time. Florida playing really, really well as of late. They just recently beat number 2 Tennessee. One of those type of games that, because of how things had gone a little bit earlier, they needed that one. And now we're kind of cooking a little bit. You look at the resume, you look at the schedule, and now you have 4 straight wins against quad 2 opponents. You lost that quad 1 there against Kansas, and that's not, obviously, that sucks. But you also had that quad 1 on the road at Tennessee, and now you have that stretch coming up: quad 1 against Arkansas, quad 2 at Georgia, quad 1, quad 1, quad 1. I mean, you got some real opportunities there to build a pretty solid resume. That Florida game was just a must. I mean, that's what we talked about going into that matchup, going into this past week with the back-to-back wins at Ole Miss and at home against Florida. It was just one of those. It didn't matter how it came. You just had to get the job done at home. And that's kind of how it ended up unfolding. You had Cason Wallace absolutely explode, almost about as perfect of a performance as you could ask for from the freshman guard. He goes 20 points, 7 for 10. Overall, 1 for 1 from 3, 5 for 5 from the free throw line, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, 3 blocks, 1 steal. Really, the only flaws that he had in the game were the 3 early turnovers that he had. Really, really cleaned things up by the end of the game. Then had the big dagger 3 to really push the, kind of solidify the lead there in the last 3-4 minutes, and then the 2 dagger free throws to ultimately win the game there down the stretch. So Cason, the keys are in his hand, and it's always been about just putting that sucker in drive and going, and now Cason is officially doing that. So it's always a great thing to see your best player playing like the best player on the team.
Yeah, and we talked about this when the season started, right? That he at some point would become Kentucky's closer in the backcourt, and you saw it, firsthand Saturday night against Florida, and that was a very efficient 20-point game too. I mean, it's 10 shot attempts, 5 of 5 at the free throw line, made 7 of those shot attempts. That's a very efficient 20. So that was a big deal too, given that he hadn't played the game prior at Ole Miss. And I know that I've not been on here since that victory, but I thought it was good to see him be back out there on the court, and then to close things out for Kentucky on a night where some other guys struggled. They had guys step up, and Cason was one of those guys.
Yeah, Cason was the star of the show. Jacob Toppin kind of being the other one. 17 points, 8 of 16 shooting. He goes 10 rebounds, 1 block, 1 assist in 35 minutes. That's another guy that we've been talking about him and just kind of not needing to be great, just understanding that, look, I am really productive when I'm just good. Like he doesn't have to go out and be a 25 point per game scorer, to be this 3-level scorer. And we just listened to John Calipari on this call-in show right before this started. And he talked about kind of the rut that he went in and the expectations, all the weight that was on his shoulders going into the year. You got to be like your brother. You got to be a first round pick. This is your year to be a lottery pick, all of those things. He had so much weight on his shoulder. And when the shots just weren't falling and, that would lead to 4 or 5 slip ups on the other end of the floor, not engaged, lack of focus, and, really just, body language not there. And really he got to the point where he was unplayable. And now Jacob is kind of, tossed that aside. That game at Missouri was kind of the low point. He said afterward that, that's my rock bottom. No floor on even that rock bottom. It's just as bad as it gets. He turns around and turns that into just slowly, progressively, more impactful, positive play. And it's not just in one individual area. It's not that he's scoring a ton of points, but he's rebounding hard. He's, getting locked in defensively. He's looking to make that extra pass. He's not just floating on the perimeter, jacking up shots. He's attacking. And that's kind of what we've been waiting for, Shawn, that attacking, playing above the rim. When you have lob opportunities come, throw them down. We've seen his highlights be the biggest momentum changers in games. Just continue that, build on that. And it's just really cool seeing somebody who went through the mental struggles that he went through and is open about it as he was, to see him kind of break through and kind of take those chains off that he had on himself, and really just kind of play free basketball. Really refreshing, cool thing to see.
Agree 100%. And Kentucky's got a roster here, Jack, that I don't think that every guy on it has to play well every night for them to win. I keep grouping them into pods, and I keep – there's always something on the show every year that is my talking point for like months. And this is going to be my talking point all the way through probably the NCAA tournament, is when you group some of these guys into position pods. And I think CJ and Antonio Reeves are a good example Saturday night. CJ hit shots, which we'll get to at some point. Antonio didn't, but you just needed one of them to do it. I feel the same way about Jacob and Chris Livingston. One of them has to play well every single time Kentucky takes the floor. It doesn't have to be the same one every single night. And I think that is probably the recipe for Kentucky to end up being a very quality team when it gets down to the NCAA tournament and March Madness. Let your stars be your stars and let your role guys be your role guys, but it doesn't have to be the same role guy every single night. And then there's going to be nights where they all play well, and then Kentucky looks like they can beat anyone. So I think they're starting to find something here. I really do. I wish that they could have gotten that win against Kansas a week or so ago, because then I think we'd be having maybe an even better feeling about it, because there had been a quad one win in the category against a team that is one of the better ones in college basketball there for a bit before their little streak that they had entering Rupp Arena. But I think this team's starting to figure some stuff out. I think this team is best playing through Kaysen and let others feed off what Kaysen does, including Oscar. Like, I think that those shooters on the wing, Oscar kind of being that guy that's going to get some offensive rebounds, make some plays, some hustle plays. Kaysen's the guy. Everybody else kind of comes around it. And I think you're starting to see those roles that we waited maybe 2 or 3 months to kind of form, I think are now really starting to shape up. And I think you're starting to see Kentucky play better because of that.
Yeah, and I know you brought up CJ here a minute before. Let's go on and hit that real quick before we kind of transition into the Oscar struggles and kind of just the different roles on this team and how they're kind of shaking out a little bit. You brought up Chris as well. He's obviously growing in his role pretty significantly. CJ Frederick, 12 points, 4 of 10 shooting, 3 for 6 from 3. He hits the first 3 threes of the game for the Cats. His first 3 shots and really, I mean, kind of helped break things open and really start making you feel good about the offense there against Florida. CJ's a guy that he was so important before he dislocated his finger, and we knew that when that injury happened, we were like, dang, man, it's just a dude who's had crap luck with injuries. I mean, just throughout his career, just weird mishaps here and there. And there's another one. I mean, the way he dislocated his finger at Missouri, he caught a Xavier Wheeler pass, and the pass was kind of a knuckleball. Wheeler kind of lost it while it was leaving his hands. So it kind of hit CJ awkwardly. It wasn't in, typical shot ready situation like he was used to seeing. And it just kind of got his eye off of it, hit him awkwardly, and ended up dislocating his finger and really set him back several weeks. He had to have that stupid splint on the back of his hand that, I mean, really messed up him catching balls, the touch on his release, just that muscle memory. If it's just a hair off, I mean, you were a shooter in your playing days, if you're just a hair off, it can completely throw off your rhythm, can throw off your muscle memory. And we saw that happen. He didn't miss by a mile, but he missed it just enough to kind of build misses on top of misses. And then at that point, you just kind of you're in a rut, and it's tough to get that out. Really good seeing him get those first three to fall. And you could tell the confidence was there. He was kind of, feeling a little bit swag. I think the fourth one was a pretty significant heat check. And I'm like, you know what? You've earned that. You've been playing in that rut for a while now. Earn that heat check. So I love seeing that. Absolutely crucial piece for this team. John Calipari has been talking about him to no end, about just the value that he brings and the importance that he has to this team on, beyond just making shots, his defense and high basketball IQ. He's kind of emerged as a leader on this team as of late as well. So CJ, got to give a tip of the cap to him. Great to see him making shots, and you definitely need him down the stretch.
Yeah, and when you're talking about things going wrong and the hand and stuff, when you're a shooter, if one thing's off, you're off, right? Like you want to be in rhythm, you want to be feeling good, the ball out of your hands. And it was good to see him knock down shots. And what I was getting at a moment ago when I was talking about grouping these guys together, like you don't have to have Reeves and CJ both get hot or knock down 3 or 4 threes a night. As long as one of them's knocking down shots and you have that consistent threat that game, and it may be Antonio Reeves against Arkansas instead of CJ Frederick, but if you take away 2 of those threes, Kentucky loses the game Saturday night. Like so that's what I'm talking about with that. It's not consistency from one single person. It's just consistency across your roster that somebody's given that need that you need on that given night. And and we saw Antonio Reeves do his thing at Ole Miss, right? And then CJ Frederick hit his shots against, and that's where I'm coming from. You're not kind of living and dying with that one guy. Kentucky's got, I think, a good collection of role players. And like I said, there's going to be nights where CJ and Antonio both are cooking. And when they are, Kentucky's probably virtually unbeatable if Case and Wallace and Oscar are doing their thing. So there's going to be nights like that. But there's also going to be a lot of nights like Saturday where one of them's going to be hitting and the other one's not. But as long as you're doing that, you can survive it. The nights those two don't make shots outside, those are the nights Kentucky looks awful on offense.
And I'm really glad, and kind of switching gears a little bit, but kind of tying that in as well. I'm kind of glad that we got the performance that we did from Oscar Tshiebwe. 4 points, 2 of 14 shooting. He had 15 rebounds, but I think 7 of that I think they came in the first 4 minutes of the game. So really, when you put kind of the efficiency beyond that, really not there. 5 fouls. He fouled out with a couple minutes left in the game. 3 turnovers. Like if you told me going into the game that Oscar, that everybody's talking about the Colin Castleton matchup, how that was going to work out, how Oscar needed to win that after dominating the way he did last year, 27 apiece in each of those wins over the Gators last year. If you had told me that Oscar was going to go 4 points, 2 of 14 shooting, 3 turnovers and fouled out, I mean, I would have said Kentucky had no chance. But the fact that they were able to put together, and I think the score was closer than I think even I felt watching it. I did think that Kentucky was just the better team and they were playing better, that the offense was playing more fluidly and the ball movement was there. And I thought they really did play well, locked in a little bit defensively as well. It's good to see, Kaysen emerge the way he did, CJ knocking down the shots that he did, Jacob being the player that we've been praying for him to become at some point in his career. He's kind of breaking through in that regard. Chris Livingston playing well, Damian Collins coming in and doing his thing in unique ways. He's been thrown in there at the 4 all season long, and now Cal's kind of trusting him to play the 5 alongside Chris Livingston, and that's a group that I think Kentucky fans are really intrigued with. So seeing this team kind of find its footing even when Oscar's struggling, he's going to get back to his dominant ways. That he's going to have another, unbelievable performance in the SEC tournament or in the NCAA tournament. He's going to have one of those dominant performances, but that's going to happen. What he's going to bring to the table. You needed the other guys to step up, and it's really good seeing how it unfolded against Florida, because that's kind of what I've been waiting for personally. Kentucky winning a game where Oscar struggles. I think that's a big step, especially offensively. Now, Oscar was a beast on the glass. I mean, hauling in 15 rebounds in 34 minutes, that's still
adding something and adding value to what you're doing and what Kentucky's doing. But to be able to close that game out against a team that had just beaten you, like as you said, a top 3 team in the country in Tennessee, and you get them at your place and you find a way to grind that thing out and win it. I thought that was a big step in the right direction for Kentucky that hopefully they can take into this game against Arkansas and build on it.
Yeah, you bring up a couple of these comments. Want to make sure we hit through that before we get, the avalanche piles up a little bit too much.
Seeing Xavier Wheeler popping out a lot in there too.
A lot of Xavier Wheeler. Cal singled him out after the game, after the Florida win, and said that Xavier was the reason why Kentucky win. It was kind of a roundabout compliment toward Cason Wallace about Cason kind of exploding the way that he did, but said that he was, very comfortable letting go of the keys and playing kind of a little bit more off ball and, just letting Cason kind of do his thing and emerge the way that he needed to. And I thought that was pretty valuable as well. But, Xavier, the way he was finishing around the basket and just being that spark plug that we've been waiting for, like that's exactly the performance that I think that we've been waiting for with Xavier and the value that he brings to the table. He finishes 8 points, 4 of 5 shooting, 3 assists, 2 rebounds, 2 steals, no turnovers in 26 minutes. A perfect Xavier Wheeler performance for what he needs to bring to the table to this team. And we've talked about his value and the reason why he doesn't need to be a 35, 32, 38 minute per game type of guy, because he's that at that point he sets the pace instead of being a change of pace guy. When he comes in and he is that fast, quick twitch kind of guy, he's going to guard you 94 feet. You really saw that value at Ole Miss when he, caused a 10-second violation. Like that is exactly what he brings to the table. And I agree with what Cal says, him kind of embracing that role and letting Cason kind of embrace his brand new role and what he needs to be for this team. I think it's exactly what this team has been waiting for and what they needed.
Another guy that is doing what? Buying into a role. And that's when you see it. When guys start buying into roles, then your identity is defined as a team. If someone's on the outside, that nucleus isn't there that needs to be at its strongest point. And you're starting to see guys buy into roles individually that collectively as a team is making this team kind of turn it on and play better basketball. Like they had an opportunity to win that game against Kansas a week or so ago. They didn't get it, but it gives you enough hope that if they're in that situation a month from now against an opponent of that quality, that they can maybe complete it. So I'm starting to feel a lot better about the way this thing looks. I mean, there's still a month here to get better and better before you get to Nashville, and then before you start working on. Somebody was talking to me tonight, actually, when I walked out of the grocery store. They said, "Where do you think Kentucky's going to be in the seed line if they do win out?" And I said, "I really don't know how much they can do," which I know that's coming up in tournament resume, so maybe it's perfect timing to kind of transition. But when it comes to that, I said, I don't know how much they can improve their seeding, Jack. I don't. Even if they win out regular season, I don't know how much better it can get because there's not a lot to show for in the non-conference. It will certainly help. But this just feels like a team, and I keep coming back to this, that regardless if you're a 10 seed, a 9 seed, an 8 seed, it doesn't matter. Just get in and be playing your best basketball on that point. You're going to have to beat some of these teams anyhow if you want to get to a Final Four. Second-round matchup against a 2 seed or a 3 seed. With Kentucky, with the reigning National Player of the Year, Cason Wallace, an NBA guy. You got these shooters maybe starting to buy into their roles, and Jacob Toppin. If you play well on that floor, you flip it, and then you're right there. I think getting in and playing your best basketball is the main focus. I don't even talk about seeding. I don't even care what it is because we've seen Kentucky as a 2 lose to a 15. It doesn't matter. Just get in and be playing your best basketball and win.
So you bring up there were a couple comments about this. One, I'll address it because it said Ben from Kentucky says, "Jack, do you know more about the Oscar story that Tom Hart talked about on live TV?" Did you hear that by chance, Sean?
I did not.
Oh, I'm glad to get your reaction to this in real time. I think it's going to be interesting. So very random timing. Tom Hart was talking about the St. Peter's loss in his conversations with Oscar Tshiebwe, I guess probably in the Bahamas, if I had to guess, just kind of one-on-one conversation with him. He said that Oscar Tshiebwe had a vision leading up to the game, that he had a conversation with God that said that a tragedy was about to take place going into the St. Peter's game, and said that the vision, like he thought the vision was going to be like a plane crash that would have basically killed the team. Like that was what he thought that was going to be the tragedy in his head. And Tom Hart told the story that he kind of like had this panic attack before it, and the team had to like talk him into getting on the plane, and they offered to put him on a bus and let him drive to Indianapolis. But that was like a very real thing going into the game. And now thinking back at it, it's like, man, no wonder the team was so tight and as uncomfortable as they were going into that game, because they had just experienced something pretty like, I mean, imagine having your star player saying, I just had a conversation with God that said that we were about to die in a plane crash. Like very, very interesting stuff. And
if there's anyone's vision that I'm listening to too, it's probably Oscar Sheboy's. So that is no, I was actually, we had a game Saturday, so I didn't get to watch the live feed of the game, so I didn't get to hear that part of it. But no, that is me in Plains.
that's kind of why I wanted to bring it up to you, and it's really cool kind of getting your reaction to it live, because I was at the game.
It's my vision every time I see one take off.
Exactly. I bet you're never going to touch a plane. You hadn't going into this, and now you're like, well, Oscar's thinking that we're going to get into it. But so it ended up being that the tragedy was the St. Peter's loss. And he talked about how there was going to be one lone survivor, and that he was going to be the lone survivor. And I guess the way Tom Hart interpreted it was that the survival was him having the 30 and 17 or whatever that he had, that he was kind of, that he was kind of doing his part to will the team. I don't know. I didn't get to listen to it live, but still very interesting. And I remember thinking back to the St. Peter's game, and obviously the stupid pregame show that we had and the nonsense that we said, saying, oh man, it's gonna be a name your score game, like a bunch of morons. My fault. Not you are not the moron. I'm the one that said I'm the moron.
A little bit.
But that happened, and I just remember thinking back at how tight the team was as the game was going on, and thinking this is completely different than what we saw yesterday, and during shoot around, and for it to work out the way it did, and remembering how tight the team was and how uncomfortable they looked as the game was going on. Xavier Wheel at the free throw line to close out that game looked like a nervous wreck, and now it just kind of adds a whole different layer to that loss. And I don't know, just wanted to get your thoughts in real time. It's pretty it's something.
Yeah, it definitely is. And that night was certainly a tragedy. That is for sure. All the way up until 4 a.m. when I went to bed, and when I woke up the next morning and couldn't believe that it happened. I never want to feel the way I felt in that moment ever again. Like, gosh, that was terrible. So, yeah, that is, man, that's something.
No more epiphanies, no more visions, no more, no more of that. Like, let's NCAA tournament, like no more tragedy talk. Like, let's loosey goosey. Like, that's what we need. All right, all right. Time to move on. A couple people talking about Nick Smith and the impact that he makes. Obviously, 5-star recruit, top 10 recruit, a former player that Kentucky wanted very, very bad, and should have been a Kentucky Wildcat if you knew his recruitment. A guy that always wanted to be at Kentucky, very outspoken about his love for John Calipari and the Kentucky Wildcats. Unfortunately, the Shaden Sharp situation and Sky Clark's commitment to Kentucky at the time ended up forcing him elsewhere, and Arkansas was the other school that prioritized him, made him feel comfortable there, and now they have him. It has not been the season I think that he has been hoping for, because of injury, because of some different stuff leading into that. He's only played 5 games, but in those 5 games, averaging almost 13 points a game, 1.8 rebounds, 1.8 assists. Not shooting super efficiently, but he's going to be kind of one of those questionable. He's, I think, a game time decision as of right now. I even checked as the show is going on right now. Still a pretty big question if he will play. I don't have any insight about that, whether or not he's going to play, but the impact that you think that he would make on the team, and just what Kentucky would need to do, assuming he is able to play.
It definitely makes an impact, right? Like when you can add somebody of that caliber, regardless of what that role would be, coming back. But that's definitely would probably complicate your scouting report a little bit more for John Calipari and for Kentucky. So it's a big game tomorrow night at Rupp Arena. I mean, that's a massive game, for Kentucky to continue this winning streak. And I know they closed the year with that road trip at Arkansas, and that was a game that we circled when the schedule was announced that would be a tough one, that Kentucky would have to close the regular season there and then jump right into SEC play against a team that a lot of people picked to possibly be a preseason Final Four contender and a national championship contender, given the talent that they had, and Nick Smith Jr. being one of the big reasons why those were predictions. So it would definitely complicate things for Kentucky if that is the case and he is able to play against Kentucky tomorrow night. But this is a big game, Jack. This is a game that Kentucky needs to keep winning. And when they lost that game to Kansas a week or so ago, we kept saying that the winning streak overall died, but the SEC winning streak did not. So keep winning in league play and keep putting yourself there and get the double-digit wins in the league here very soon. And you're starting to turn the corner when it comes to resume and being one of the better teams, especially from the SEC. I mean, the SEC going into the year was believed to be one of the more talented conferences in the country. And if you can continue to climb that ladder, put yourself in a position when the SEC tournament starts in Nashville, this is a team that still has plenty of opportunities to get some quad one wins.
Yeah, and Captain Savio says, does Nick Smith equals what happened to Shaden Sharp at UK last year? There has been some chatter behind the scenes that he is, kind of one of those it's right knee management. And he's a guy that I think is projected to be, a potential top 5 pick, at minimum lottery pick, probably firmly in that top 10 conversation because he is an elite 3-level scorer. He is a guy that is capable of going on and, giving you 30 points at any given moment. And I have heard that there is some management on that side of things, NBA and in terms of NBA and, making sure his draft stock doesn't tank because he decides to rush back from injury too early. And I don't even think it has anything to do, with wanting to just hold out and just having his eyes all on the NBA. But I think just kind of a business decision of, I'm still not right. I can tell that I'm not right. And I don't want to rush myself back and then, make this a long-term serious issue that does tank my draft stock at the end of the day. So I think it's a big picture decision on his end. And it is the right knee management is something that they're still going through. And he was back on the bench with his teammates this past week. And, he's away from the team for a while and came back. So definitely one to keep an eye on. And I want to beat good teams at their best, at full strength, because that's going to help them at the very end. And Ben from Kentucky said the field of 68 was talking about Nick Smith family doesn't want him to play. Yeah, I think that is very much a real situation that's going on with them. And I'm glad it's not something that would be happening if he did end up at Kentucky. So right now, all eyes are on Ricky Council, a guy who is taking over the SEC, 17 points per game on 45% shooting, 80% from the free throw line. Really, really impressive talent. He's the guy that I think is going to go heads up with Case and Wallace, and that's going to be a really, really big matchup to keep an eye on. What about that matchup in particular are you intrigued with?
Alpha and Alpha. I think that's what intrigues me the most. And Kaysen's going to have to play well on both ends of the floor. Going to have to defend the toughest matchup, and he's going to also have to produce offensively for Kentucky. So this is a game where, guard play carries you in the NCAA tournament. Guard play carries you at any level of basketball. I firmly believe that, especially when you get into postseason play. I learned that the hard way over the weekend. And but guard play in general carries you. And this is a matchup for Case and Wallace where I want to see him bounce back with another big performance following the Florida performance and defend, but also get a lot of quality baskets and quality shots for Kentucky and set some shots up for some other guys to be playing good basketball. And if he does that, whoever wins that matchup tomorrow night at that spot wins the game.
I agree. And somebody in the comments brought up the team's 3-point. Connor Riggs says Arkansas can't shoot the 3 well. Only one player shooting over 35%. I don't think they have anyone who can guard Oscar. I do think defending the 3 is going to be a huge, huge, huge thing for the Cats. 30.6% from deep. And I do think that has hurt with Nick Smith being out, because he is a guy that was projected to be one of their best shooters and scorers. And with him being out, it's kind of thrown some stuff into whack. And yeah, I think that has hurt quite a bit. But Kentucky can't afford to let another team come into Rupp Arena and go crazy from deep. Like I know that's been something where really bad teams, bad shooting teams have come into Rupp Arena and done really, really well. We saw Florida get hot a little bit there at the end of the game. It started off strong, but ended up finishing 31.6% from the field, from three, 6 of 19 overall. You had Kyle Lofton go 3 for 3, Will Richard go 2 for 5. And then you had Miriam Jones go 1 for 4. He had that prayer at the end of the game, and he tried to win it, or I guess tie it and send it to overtime there at the end. So you have to keep them at average. You can't let them go nuclear. And I think it is interesting. Anthony Black's another guy, a McDonald's All-American, 5-star kid that I was really impressed with at a high school. 12.5 points per game, 5.3 rebounds, 4 assists, 1.7 steals. Really a solid all-around talent. Like 6'9", size 6'7", 6'8", 6'9" type of big guard that is going to present a very real challenge. I'm interested to see who guards him. What matchup that's going to be. Curious your thoughts on that one, Shawn. Is that going to be maybe a Jacob Toppin matchup? Because I feel like it might have to be, because I don't like the head-to-head there with Antonio Reeves. I don't like the matchup there with even CJ Frederick as well as he's been defending. I think it's going to need to be kind of big, versatile forward guarding big, talented guard.
It's going to have to be. I think it's going to have to be a guy that moves well with some length and some size, and I think Jacob Toppin fits that matchup. And when that's the case, this is where I'm coming from, where I group these guys into pods. Kaysen's going to have to be that two-way guy tomorrow night, right? He's going to have to score. He's going to have to produce on that in the floor, but he's also going to have to defend his tail off and get a tough matchup. Jacob, on the other hand, you may not see the offensive production in this matchup if he's having to be called upon to defend at a high level as well. But if he does that, Kentucky's going to be in a good position to win this game. So I do think that that's going to be the matchup that Kentucky goes there with, and I think it's the right call.
Steven, he lit a torch in our comment section and just tossed it in. Like there's already gasoline, and he just lit the match and threw it in there. Could you imagine Shaedon Sharpe and then Nick Smith in back-to-back seasons at Kentucky? Could you imagine?
I was actually going to say that a moment ago, but I was like, I'm not going to go there. So I'm glad Steven did, because it's like Kentucky. If Shaedon Sharpe had played, obviously it would have been the perfect thing. But out the door, and it leads to Nick Smith Jr., and then you repeat the same process,
and it was
burned to the ground.
Shawn, I know, it was so close. Like if Sky Clark decommits 6 months earlier, 5 months earlier, Nick Smith is a Wildcat. And I mean, that would have been worst case scenario for this program in terms of just rallying behind it and having that would have been just an absolute disaster. I'm glad he's where he needs to be, and I am rooting for. He's such a good talent, and I really am impressed with him. And I would love for him to get back by the SEC tournament and even play in the NCAA. I always like seeing the best players in the NCAA tournament in big games. I love that. Like seeing Cade Cunningham make the NCAA tournament a couple years back, and those type of talents when when they're on the bubble or whatever. And I like seeing those guys get the bids. And this obviously they're firmly in the tournament, assuming they finish out the year strong. But Nick Smith is one of those guys that I think could take over a game in the NCAA tournament. And I am rooting for that, as long as it doesn't happen against Kentucky or against Kentucky in the SEC tournament. I would love to see him go nuclear against somebody else and just kind of let cream rise to the top. So I am rooting for him, and I do want him to get back on the floor, but not at Kentucky's expense. That would just be bad. I'll go through a couple of these comments, questions. Andrew Lachine says Chris will guard Anthony Black. I agree. I mean, I don't think that's a bad call. I think he does defend well, and Cal just on his radio show was raving about Chris Livingston and the growth that he's had. There were a couple questions earlier about his transition to the 4, and I guess it is fair to provide some commentary on that, because it has been such a big thing. Zach Bingman says, how is Chris handling the transition to the 4? A couple other people were talking about it, but yeah, I do think it is something that is worthy of conversation, and get your thoughts on it as well, Shawn. Chris, there has been pushback, during the year. I think it's not even necessarily about the position that he's playing, but the role and how he was getting, put in position to succeed and things like that. I think that was where some of the frustration was coming from, where, it is a McDonald's All-American, a guy that was very productive in high school at a very high-profile program like Oak Hill. When you get that guy and he comes in and he's not producing at the pace and at the rate that I think they were expecting going into this process. And I think even on Kentucky's end, they were expecting, a little bit more out of him. And it just, a two-way thing where the talent, the potential, and they're just not producing the way that you're expecting, the way he's expecting, the way that the staff's expecting, the way the family's expecting. It just kind of creates some tension about, well, what can we be doing to improve that? How can he be used? And I think a part of that was, I think trying to force feed him as a small ball four, as a guy who has played the three the majority of his career, and playing more 2 and 3 than 4 and 3 throughout his career. That kind of created some, well, maybe he just needs the ball in his hands more. Maybe he needs to put the ball on the floor more and be, have the ability to drive to the basket and score at the rim and draw fouls and do things like that, and create shots for himself and things like that. And I think there has been a realization on Kentucky's end that you need the ball in Kaysen's hands. You need the ball, in Antonio's and CJ's hands to knock down shots. And at some point, something's got to give. And when they have given Chris the chance to, attack and score in those ways, we've seen him turn the ball over, or, miss shots, or, not have strong enough hands and, getting it stripped from him and things like that. And like at some point, you got to let the guys who are playing well continue to play well. So I think there has been a very clear point of emphasis about getting him back on the floor, and yes, playing him at the 4, because it is something that he can produce and he can find a lot of success at. And I think he has embraced that as of late, and things are getting better than they were even 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. So I do think that things are getting better in that regard. And I think that's what's best for this team. I loved the lineup that we saw, Shawn. We got one lineup as a 5-man lineup of Kaysen, CJ, Antonio, Chris Livingston, and Damian Collins. It was a very brief stretch, but I absolutely loved what I saw there, and I want to see more of it moving forward. But even if it's Oscar instead of Chris, I think that's a really, really efficient lineup, and one that I'm really excited about coming down the home stretch of the season.
Yeah. What do you think of Damian? What do you think of Damian and as a role as this season kind of comes down the stretch here and into mid-February and into March? Like, what do you think about that?
Damian and Cal said something unbelievably heavy. It just kind of made my heart sank of hearing him talk about it. Just the fact that Damian lost the best man in his wedding. That his dad, and I talked about it on the show, how close they were, how they were brothers, and how that they were just inseparable and things like that. And it really did hurt to have it unfold that way. And now that he's kind of gotten past that a little bit and is playing more and getting more confidence in practice, we're starting to see those spurts, and we're starting to see that development. And Cal talked about it and said, it's really cool seeing him have that confidence and kind of start inching by inch getting better. And I do think you got to figure out a way to get him back on the floor. You got to figure out a way to be the player that I think Kentucky needs him to be. And I don't know if it's going to be as a 15, 20, 25-minute per game type of guy, but his number is going to be called. And I think it may be in a 10-minute role, 10, 12, 13-minute role. And I think when he is in, I think he is going to need to produce. And I think we're at least starting to inch toward that.
I agree. I think so too. I think you're going to see opportunities increase for him, and especially maybe here in the recent stretch, given the way the game ended and stuff the other day, and then the role that he had to play. So I could see him getting a look early tomorrow night, and maybe more than one look. And if he plays well, maybe he plays his way into more minutes, and that would be huge for him. That'd be huge for Kentucky as well. Jack, it should be noted too that this is a quad one opportunity for Kentucky tomorrow night at Rupp Arena. Like, you don't get a ton of quad one opportunities at home unless you're playing, some of these teams that are in the elite. Like Tennessee's going to be a quad one here in a couple of weeks, and then Auburn a quad one. But a lot of quad ones come on the road or on neutral sites. So to get one at home here, Kentucky needs to get this win. And Will it hold as a quad one? I don't know. Arkansas is right there on the verge of the net of it being a quad two, but it's a step in the right direction if Kentucky can get another quad one and kind of escape that quad four loss that they had against South Carolina. And Arkansas is a team that just the other day kind of struggled with South Carolina, that same South Carolina team. So Kentucky needs to get this one badly at Rupp Arena, and if they do, I think they continue taking strides and taking steps in the right direction. Another thing that gets paid attention to late in the season is how are you playing down the stretch? And this is a team that's on an SEC winning streak right now. If they can get a couple more wins here, and then looking at the schedule and just pulling it up, I mean, you got Arkansas, you're on the road at Georgia, on the road at Mississippi State, Tennessee, road trip to Florida, Auburn at home, Vandy at home, and at Arkansas. Like, there's a lot of tough games, but there's also some winnable games if you play well.
A little behind on these, got carried away with the show. So let me knock out a couple real quick. First, from our friends at Best Western, with more than 30 Best Western hotels and resorts throughout Kentucky. Both leisure and business travelers can count on what matters most: a warm welcome, a rewarding stay, and a truly exceptional value. Massive lakes, tree houses, mountains, mountain tunnels, bustling cities. You never know what's around the next bend. From outdoor activities to local restaurants, Kentucky offers something fun for everyone, and Best Western offers something for every traveler wherever life takes you. Best Western is there. Visit bestwesternkentucky.com and at Best Western on social media. And I also want to tell you, Kentucky fans, we know you will be making your way to Nashville for the SEC tournament. We say welcome back. Experience beautiful Sumner County, Tennessee, just minutes from Nashville. Discover our storied history and strong country music heritage. Indulge in our delicious dining options. Relax in the simplicity of our lakes, parks, and farms. Connect with the authenticity of Sumner County, Tennessee. Head to visit SumnerTennessee.com. That's visit SumnerTN.com to learn more. Go back to the comments, see if there's anything else that we need to hit on. A lot of it, what's going on. Dylan Gilbert, would they be a quality quad one win? Yes, as of right now, they are 29 overall, like Shawn said. And Shawn, another thing, Florida is still 43 in the net, and that's a home win. So they're still, I mean, I think Kentucky fans should be rooting for Florida to close out the regular season. I think, or I guess obviously up until that trip to Gainesville, where it is a quad one still. But I think in this next stretch of 4-ish games before that matchup, Kentucky fans should be rooting for Florida to, build together a nice little resume on their end and inch closer to that. It's 30, right?
Yes.
Top 30 home wins. So they should be rooting that, and that'd be a nice little way to sneak in another quad one win late there. So keep a close eye on that one. And then while we're going through it, at Georgia is a firm quad two. I don't think it's going to inch to the quad one rank, and I don't think it's going to slip to a 3. And then you have 4 straight quad one games at Mississippi State versus Tennessee, at Florida, and then versus Auburn. They are also right there on the that quad one, quad two line. So you need to be rooting for Auburn outside of games, that game against Kentucky. But, and then obviously ending the season at Arkansas, that's going to hold firm as a quad one as well. So really solid stretch of games there, Shawn, to end the regular season of 6 quad one games, potentially even a 7th if that Florida game switches over to a quad one as well. So be rooting for the opponents outside of that Kentucky has faced and is going to face outside of the head-to-head matchups as well.
Yeah, and you want that Auburn game too to be a quad one here in a couple of weeks. They're sitting right at 30 on the net, so that's another one that can move. Just looking here too, resume wise, I mean, nothing that would help Kentucky, but Michigan State, that game, that neutral floor game, Michigan State's at 45. That could actually be a quad 2 loss if Michigan State doesn't finish the season strong, which doesn't help Kentucky's resume. But they need to get some quad 1 wins here coming up, and they have opportunities. And I would call tomorrow night a must win.
Yeah, I think we're at that point as well. Zach Bingman says, just for funsies, what are the odds Cal throws out an Ugo, Bradshaw, Collins, Edwards, DJ/Rob lineup next year? I hope very slim, because that would be a little insane with Ugo at the 5, Bradshaw at the 4, Collins at the 3, I don't think that's anything any of us would want to see. And Justin at the 2, he's not a 2, and then DJ or Rob at the 1. Definitely not something that 5-man lineup is just definitely not something that we're hoping for. So, but yeah, it is interesting to kind of think about what the roles will be next year and things like that. And I guess while we're talking about it, DJ Wagner and Aaron Bradshaw were both in Frankfurt this past weekend, Shawn. Their first chance to play in front of Big Blue Nation. I loved that opportunity for them. Kentucky fans were just packed from top to bottom at the Kentucky State University basketball arena. Loved what we saw out of all of them. And we got 4-star wing Billy Richmond there as well. Talked to him after the game, said some impressive things about Kentucky. I think Kentucky's in a really good spot there. He was there after the game at Rupp Arena and just kind of playing air basketball by himself with an invisible basketball, got some shots up on the Rupp Arena floor. That was kind of cool, kind of seeing, maybe that's going to be his home in 2 years. So seeing kind of that what could be the future of Kentucky basketball, that was pretty neat. But really, really strong performances for all three. 21 points for Aaron Bradshaw, 18 for DJ, and Billy Richmond finished with 15. The 3 leading scorers on the team. I just love what all 3 of them brought. Aaron Bradshaw is really expanding his game, knocking down jumpers, mid-range. Even out, he had a pick and pop 3-pointer from the top of the key, Shawn, that was just absolutely stunning. DJ Wagner with a quiet 18 points, started out and was really looking to facilitate and be a playmaker away from just as a scorer, and then he kind of took things over late. Really attacked the basket hard, really crafty finisher, strong in that area, gets to his spots extremely well. I think he has a really high floor, and I think his fail rate at Kentucky is just extremely low. I think he might not be a superstar. I think he has that chance, but I don't think that there's even a slight chance that he's going to be a dud because of just kind of the mindset that he brings to the table, the way he attacks, things like that. So I definitely love it. Zach Bingman adds were the players at the Camden game a statement of the teammates of DJ and Bradshaw. I thought that was really cool as well. You had Jacob Toppin, Antonio Reeves, Chris Livingston, Lance Ware, and I think Kareem Watkins was the other, and Adu Thero. They were all there seeing the Cats in action, kind of supporting who could be their future teammates. I thought that was really cool as well. But a cool opportunity in Frankfurt there for the future Wildcats, Shawn.
Yeah, that is a very cool opportunity for them. It's also, I thought, was a cool opportunity for the fans as well. And I'm seeing you there under the basket in some of these highlights. Looks like you had the best view of anyone.
Yeah, it was a cool to see them up close and personal. And John Calipari was there with Chen Coleman, and just a big family feel. I talked to the 2 signees after the game. Obviously, talked to Billy Richmond. Got some good quotes from them. Got some stories cooking up. But I also interviewed DeJuan Wagner Sr. to talk about just kind of the decision process and getting to this point with DJ and letting him make the decision for himself, but also being very happy that he is going to college with family. With John Calipari is family for him, and it was a very impactful piece of his life and his basketball career. I even asked him, I was like, you were very outspoken after your time with John Calipari at Memphis, saying that you owed your life to him. What does it mean now that the guy that you trusted with everything is now, your son's hands are now, with him. And he was like, yeah, I mean, it's really cool that, he's family, and it's not just with John Calipari. He's now there with Kareem Watkins. He's there with Lance Ware. He's there with Aaron Bradshaw. I mean, there's a real family vibe coming to Lexington next year that I know Kentucky fans are extremely excited about, but it's cool knowing that that dad is happy as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And those guys getting a taste of Kentucky fans and everything in the state, I thought that was a really cool thing for them as well. And then the current players there supporting them, and you see all the Kentucky gear in those highlights there in the stands. I mean, I thought that was a really cool thing. At this point in the season in February, it gives Kentucky fans a chance to kind of take a break and look at the future of what's coming in here very soon. And definitely a cool thing when something like that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. get out of here, a couple more things. Last thoughts on Arkansas. Shawn, what are you expecting tomorrow night? Let's kind of do a little mini prediction here. What does Kentucky need to do to make you feel satisfied with what hopefully is a win tomorrow night? But obviously a win is what would satisfy you. But assuming they are able to win, what would make you happy and make you continue to feel good about how Kentucky is trending this season?
I want to see across the board excellent guard play. That's what I want to see, because I think that's what's going to be the difference when Kentucky gets down to tournament format. It's not Oscar Tshiebwe, it's the guards. What let Kentucky down a year ago? Guard play. Mm-hmm. It wasn't Oscar. Like, Oscar's going to have his moments. I think Oscar's going to have his games when the lights become the brightest and it gets down to that stage. I think Oscar's going to play his best basketball. I want to see Kaysen, CJ, Antonio. I want to see a collective attack from Kentucky's backcourt. Just an overwhelming effort from everyone in the backcourt playing its best basketball, even Xavier in his role. And I know that's a lot to ask, to have four guys clicking at once, but I want to see it. Like, I want to see that happen at some point, because I think when it does happen, I think Kentucky's backcourt is capable of being right there with anyone's in college basketball, led by Kaysen Wallace. So that's what I'm looking for tomorrow night. Does Kaysen set the tone, and do the other guys follow? Do the other two make shots, and does Xavier play his spot minutes and play his role well? Because I feel like this is a game where Xavier may have to play more than he's been asked to play the last few games, just given the pace of play, the athleticism and things in the backcourt, and the speed. I think you could see Xavier have to play a more significant role tomorrow night.
Yeah, I'm looking at I would say Kaysen as well. I need CJ to continue to make shots. It doesn't have to be 4 or 5 3-pointers, but continue to go 1 for 2, go 2 for 5, something like that. Just continue to see shots fall and build that confidence and build that continuity that I think we need to see from him moving forward. Kaysen obviously continue to build on point guard lead guard status. Continue to do that. Very excited to hopefully do that. But Chris Livingston's a guy that I'm really excited for, and somebody that I think we're waiting for a breakthrough with him. You could tell John Calipari, the way he continues to talk about him, and you could tell that they are going to force feed Chris until it works. Like, they want him to succeed however he's used, whatever position it's going to be. They want him to be successful here, and I'm confident he can be successful here. He's a hell of a basketball player, and he's a guy that I think is right on the cusp of a real breakthrough game. We've seen the 8-point start, I think, against Kansas, and a couple of those performances where we've seen him play well, but not that, like, oh goodness, like, this is why Chris was a top 15, top 10 recruit and a 5-star McDonald's All-American. Like, that's who he needs to be, and I'm waiting for that breakthrough moment. And I think it could come against a really tough big guard, guard heavy Arkansas team. I think it could be an opportunity for him to find mismatches and really attack the basket, maybe knock down a shot or two. I think this could be a really, really solid opportunity for him. And so my early pick for MVP in that one is definitely Chris Livingston. I'm excited to see how that one unfolds. Last thing from me, I want to get your thoughts on the news that Rajon Rondo is expected to join the coaching staff as a student assistant. He is back on campus taking classes right now. I was told that he's sitting there in Whitehall taking classes with everybody else, and he's working toward becoming an on-bench assistant coach for the team as a student. So what are your thoughts on that possibility, and what would that mean to you for that to come to fruition?
I think it's always really cool when you see different eras come together, right? Like, Rondo didn't play for Cal, but you see that welcome atmosphere and stuff, that family atmosphere. Rondo played for Tubby, Cal's here, bring him into the mix. I think it would be massive for the program. Obviously, I think it'd be especially the cool factor of it. I mean, that's a cool thing. Like, I would be a big fan of it. I would love to see, though, that what am I trying to say here? Rondo's personality in a coaching role like that. I think that's intriguing and interesting to me. So, and then you get John Calipari on the bench, and as fiery as he is, and I think I think it's going to be a good thing. I really do. I think it's something to be excited about. I mean, you already see what Tyler Eulis's impact has been. Anytime you can have some of the greats come back and make an impact and give back to the program in a different way than what they did under their playing career, I think it's a big step in the right direction. And I think it'd be cool for Rondo. I think it'd be cool for Kentucky, and I think it'd be cool for BBN as well.
Yeah, Major Cajun says Rondo is a loose cannon, isn't he? I mean, he has ruffled a lot of feathers in a lot of different locker rooms, but it's because he has a demand for excellence as an alpha male. I know what it takes to be great. I'm a two-time world champion in the NBA. He is known as a basketball savant. He's known as one of the most brilliant basketball minds to ever play the game. And to have that guy in your locker room, even if the possibility of it ruffling some feathers and some accountability will be a really big thing in that locker room, but I think it's a good thing. I mean, take a guy like Rob Dillingham. We've talked about him extensively. We've talked about some of the concerns, making sure he stays in the game, in the gym, work ethic, staying, working hard, staying in the classroom, doing all of the things that it takes to be a successful college basketball player. I think that type of guy in the locker room alongside Rajon Rondo is perfect. Like, I think Rondo is a dude that will tell Rob Dillingham to his face, you are way too talented to be slacking in other areas. You are for what your potential is as an NBA talent, an electric, Jamal Crawford, Lou Williams type of guy. Like, there is a spot for you in the NBA if you are willing to accept that and do what it takes to become that type of talent. And I think that type of accountability is exactly what Rob Dillingham needs. He needs somebody who's going to have a foot in his butt and say, we got to stick with it. We got to be, hold each other accountable and make sure that we're getting the best version of ourselves. And I think that is the path to Rob Dillingham being successful at Kentucky. And I think that's the exact person that he needs in his life to continue the track. I think things are going well. I'm going down to overtime this weekend on our path to Athens for the Georgia road game. Steven and I are going down there, and we're going to take a pit stop in Atlanta to see overtime and how Rob's doing, and talk to the coaches and see him play Friday night and all that. So really looking forward to that. But he's a guy who has a lot of potential, and it's somebody who can be a real star at Kentucky if he's all in, engaged, and says, all right, let me be the best version of myself. And I'm really excited that Rondo could be the guy to, help hold him to that standard. And Tyler Eulis. I mean, let's not forget that Tyler Eulis was a hell of a player in his own right, and, National Player of the Year contender, and, Bob Cousy Award winner. He was as good as it gets at the point guard position as well. Having those two in your ear constantly to be like, look, and with DJ Wagner, obviously that will obviously be a huge help as well. But with Dillingham especially being like, look, we got to be on top of you. We got to make sure that you are the player that we know you can be. I think it's an unbelievable move, and I think it's going to unlock the best version of Rob, and I think it's going to kickstart what I think is going to be a really successful coaching career for Rondo. Zach Bingman says, what's Rondo's direction with this? Does he want to be a coach, or is this more for DJ and Rob development? It's because he wants to be a coach, and I think it's no secret that he's been pretty outspoken about wanting to be a coach long term at the end of the day. And I guess my only concern about this happening is if an NBA team looks at this and goes, well, if he's willing to be a student assistant at Kentucky, will he be would he be willing to be a on-court coach, full-time assistant, lead assistant, with us and with a franchise in the NBA? So that would be my only caveat to this, is maybe a team sees this as an opportunity to slide in and get him now that they know that he's receptive to being a coach. But maybe Rondo is just like, all right, I will cross that bridge when I get there. I want to get my start where my start in coaching where I got my start as a player in college. I think that's a really cool opportunity, one that I'm certainly excited for. And seeing him, go from player to teacher is going to be a really cool thing that I think all parties involved are going to be very much better off because of that. Last thing from me, Shawn, one last note from our friends at MyBookie. You asked for it and they listen. MyBookie designed a unique deposit bonus that lets you cash in and cash out quick. This is a unique deposit bonus for sports bettors who want to focus on what to bet and not a payout sweat. Make your first deposit today with promo code KSR. Wager your deposit amount once, and you are eligible to cash out. If you want a sports book that gives you the most for your money, bet on the big game with MyBookie. Pre-game live lines and Super Bowl props. Bet everything from the opening coin toss, the length of the national anthem, to the color of the Gatorade dumped on the winning coach. I can't tell you exactly who is going to win the Super Bowl, but I can tell you where I'm placing my bets, and that is with my bookie. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with my bookie. Shawn Smith, let's get the heck out of here. Where can fans find your work?
You can find my work at gobigbluecountry.com, and you can follow me on Twitter at gbbcountry.
You can find me on Twitter at Jack Pilgrim KSR. Reach out to me via email, jpilgrim at KentuckySportsRadio.com. With that, we'll be back next time for the Jam Pack Sources Say podcast. We will see you then.